This is a student brief state legal case presented by Matthew Gobin for Class 3515, Legal and Ethical Issues in Veterinary Technology at St. Petersburg College School of Veterinary Technology. The case that we're looking at today is Jennifer S. Mitchell versus Susan Tuccio Heinrichs. The Supreme Court of Alaska, number S-8937. This case was decided July 20th of 2001. The facts of this case. On May 29th, 1997, Susan Heinrichs saw two dogs running loose on her property. She recognized one of the dogs, a husky, had been there several times in the past 2 months. Susan Heinrichs had repeatedly attempted to find the owner of the dog. She did not know that the dog was owned by Jennifer Mitchell. Ms. Heinrichs then saw the husky running too close to her livestock pen containing goats, chickens, and newborn goats. Because of the birth of the goats, the dogs were excited by the smell of the blood that was in the pen. Ms. Heinrichs was afraid for the safety of her livestock. She grabbed her shotgun and walked towards the dogs. The dogs turned towards her, and Ms. Heinrichs was afraid for her own safety as the dogs were worked up by the blood that was in the pen. Fearing for her safety, she shot and killed one of the dogs, which was a husky. After hearing the shots, Ms. Mitchell discovered her dog on Ms. Heinrichs' property 10 to 15 minutes later. Ms. Mitchell confronted Ms. Heinrichs and then removed her dog from the property. On July 15, 1997, Ms. Mitchell filed a complaint against Ms. Heinrichs for compensatory damages. In October, Ms. Heinrichs had written a letter and apologized for killing the husky. She offered Ms. Mitchell $250 to replace the dog. Ms. Mitchell did not accept the offer of the money. Ms. Heinrichs then filed for a summary judgment in order to dismiss the claims of emotional distress and punitive damages that were filed by Ms. Mitchell. Superior Court Judge Steinkruger decided in favor of Ms. Heinrichs and dismissed the claims of emotional distress and punitive damages. He did find for compensatory damages against Heinrichs for the fair market value of the dog. Heinrichs had to then file for a secondary summary judgment because Ms. Mitchell had failed to establish the fair market value of the husky. According to Mitchell, the dog had no value before being shot. According to her, this was because there is no value in possessing another person's dog. Heinrichs then requested dismissal of the first summary judgment due to the failure of Mitchell to produce the value of the dog. The Superior Court of Alaska agreed to dismiss the first summary judgment. Mitchell then appealed to the Supreme Court of Alaska, challenging the decision of the... The issues that we have here are several. The first is the standard of review. The Supreme Court examines a decision by the lower court and reject the first summary judgment based on insufficient evidence to support emotional distress or punitive damages. There is a question of material fact as to whether Ms. Mitchell is entitled to damages based on material law. Basically, is there a law guaranteeing Ms. Mitchell damages for emotional suffering at the loss of her dog? Now, the second issue is, did the Superior Court properly dismiss the case based on the precedent of a previous case? They looked at several. Richardson versus Fairbanks North Star Borough was another case in which a pet was killed and damages were awarded for emotional distress based on the reckless killing of a pet. Was the same threshold established in this case? The previous case was an extreme case where a pet was killed in an extreme and malicious manner. Did the Superior Court err in deciding that damages awarded for a pet could not include sentimental or companionship value? The Supreme Court examined another case, Landers versus the Municipality of Anchorage, to determine this. In this more recent case, it was determined that the subjective value of the pet was not determinable. The standard in this case was based on the intentional emotional infliction of one person by killing another person's pet. In the judgment, the Supreme Court affirmed the rulings of the Superior Court in dismissing the claim of emotional damage by Ms. Mitchell. The Supreme Court also limited the damages to fair market value. They then decided that the fair market value was zero based on the claims of Ms. Mitchell. The court then recognized that the value of to the owner could far exceed the fair market value of the pet. Conversion claim is based on replacement value of the dog for services the pet provides to the owner that is intangible. They reversed the conversion claim decision and remanded the case to trial to determine the conversion claim. The reasoning here is that they attempted to use a combination of what state laws are already on the books, precedent from previous cases, and the actual facts of this case to try to make a sound decision. So by comparing this case to Richardson versus Fairbanks North Star Borough, they did not find the same threshold was met. The shooting of Miss Mitchell's dog was not heinous, it was not malicious. Miss Heinrich was merely attempting to protect the livestock and her own property. In comparing this case to Landers versus the Municipality of Anchorage, the same threshold was not met. Miss Heinrich was not attempting to inflict pain and suffering on Miss Mitchell by shooting her dog. The reasoning continued is that the Supreme Court of Alaska also examined Miss Mitchell's reasoning that this was a trespass to chattels, and the standard was not met. This term applies to a rancher who loses an entire herd of cattle or a little chicken farm due to the malice or negligence of another person. This claim did not meet the standard of this other case. The claim from Miss Mitchell that her dog had no value further distracted from the case and the decisions. The Supreme Court in the end declared the dog worthless, but in the end gave Miss Mitchell a route to recover expenses for veterinary care, behavior training, and purchase price. The most important outcome is that this case affirmed the ruling from the lower court that damages may be recouped from the loss of a dog only pertain to resale value or expenses paid in keeping the animal, not for emotional or sentimental. Now, there was not any listed dissenting opinion on this. It was written by the Chief Justice. Nationally, there has been a conflict with how this case was decided. Several small municipalities across the country have enacted laws contrary to this legal opinion. So these conflicting opinions also include a couple court cases. One of those is Brousseau versus Rosenthal. In this case, an Illinois appellate court compared pets to photographs that have no market value but has value to the owner. In another case, Jankowski versus Prezier Animal Hospital, this case takes into account emotional attachment of a pet owner to their pet. So across the country, we see some dissenting opinions based on other cases that have come up. So in the analysis of Mitchell versus Heinrichs, I agree with the outcome of this case. The loss of a pet is terrible and may have lasting emotional consequences, but it does not warrant damages for emotional distress by the courts. When the courts award damages to a parent or a spouse of a person that was killed, the emotional damage has widespread ramifications for the affected's entire life. For example, a spouse may have lost a partner that they're raising children with. The person that was lost may have been contributing to the household in many ways, and the loss is devastating to an entire family. Or if we look at the loss of a child, it's equally as damaging to a couple or parent and represents the continuation of their family into the future. Losing a pet does not compare to these other losses.